Hello everyone, my name is Alex. I'm a 2000 rated over-the-board chess player, and in this series we're going from 1500 to 2000 elo in chess.com rapid games, where I'll be explaining my thought process as best as I possibly can for your education and entertainment. Today we have a Vienna game with e4, e5, knight to c3, and there's a few ways that black can respond to this. This is one of my favorite openings. I've got so many videos on the channel in the Vienna. And my opponent goes knight to f6, which allows us to play f4 with the Vienna gambit. Now, a lot of you watching this video that are like under the sort of 1500 elo range, the majority of your opponents will take on f4, thinking that it's maybe like a king's gambit situation. Except with the two knights already on the board, it is very different, because if black takes, we have pawn to e5 kicking this knight, and it's all very good stuff. I also have a full Vienna guide on my channel, going through like everything in the Vienna game, in the Vienna gambit, if you want to check that out after this video. But my opponent goes for the main line with pawn to d5, just counter-attacking in the center. We should take on e5. This is a very strong pawn, and we attack the knight. My opponent takes on e4, and here we don't really want to take. That kind of just helps black out. Also, we have to be very, very aware of the potential danger that a queen to h4 move poses, because let's say we play a move like d4 here, we'd probably be completely losing after queen h4 check, because g3 blocking is met with knight takes g3, and if pawn takes g3, queen takes h1, and we are down so much material there. So the line that I like is queen to f3. You can also play knight to f3 here. Both moves are viable. I feel like queen f3 is a more, what's the word? More ambitious approach, I would say. Often this queen shifts to the g3 square to eye up the g7 pawn and defend the e5 pawn. Sometimes as well, we build a big center with pawn to d4 after, say, this exchange on c3 and b takes c3, bishop to d3. And this knight will often come to e2 and rotate to the f4 square, where either it can attack a bishop on e6, which is very common, or the knight can go to h5 to eye up the dark squares in the black position. My opponent, however, goes knight to c6, which is one of the best moves, which of course attacks the central pawn on e5. Now, we can't take this knight. It looks like we can play take, 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 and we're defending the pawn. Except it's not that simple, because if we take, black throws in the move knight to d4, hitting the queen and hitting the c2 pawn. And I will show you after the game some of the traps involved in that line. So we just have to pin the knight with bishop to b5, because this knight essentially poses way too much danger, so we might as well get our bishop out, immobilize this knight, and prepare to get castled kingside. My opponent takes on c3. We will take back with the b-pawn, because we want to play pawn to d4 and get this strong pawn chain. And one of the main lines here is queen h4 check, which my opponent plays. And the idea is that the main line is pawn to g3, queen to e4 check, queen takes e4, pawn takes e4, and we go into an endgame where black has the bishop pair and white has a bit of a damaged pawn structure, but the pawn on e4 is very vulnerable. However, I've recently been experimenting with this queen to f2 line, which is super interesting, because on one level, black can just go take, take, and bishop to d7 to break the pin, and there's some really interesting lines there. If black doesn't do that, he kind of just helps us. And one of the other lines you have to consider is queen to e4 check. And after a move like knight to e2, queen takes c2 castle kingside, white sacrifices the c2 pawn, but has excellent play. I believe that's the line anyway. Maybe it's queen to e2, but my opponent goes bishop to e7. And we have some options here. Pawn to g3 makes no sense, because after queen to e4 check, we simply lose our rook on h1. So to me, the move that makes the most sense is knight to f3, asking this queen what it's doing. We could take, and after bishop takes, go g3, but we might as well develop with a tempo, right? So let's go knight to f3. My opponent here could play queen to e4 check, again going after this c2 pawn. That is definitely playable. And here we have a couple options, right? So the first option I would say is queen to e2. And that basically just blocks the check, offers up the c2 pawn, and then we can castle. Which we go down a pawn, but it's also not clear how we're creating immediate counterplay, at least to me. Alternatively, we could play king to d1, defending the c2 pawn and getting out of danger, which, although that looks very risky, also looks viable. Something like king d1, bishop g4 going after this knight and pinning it, rook to e1. If take, to me it looks like we're actually doing quite well there. Let's say queen back to g6. Maybe even pawn to d4. I kind of like that position. We don't have to do that. King f1 makes no sense, really, because we're giving up this pawn for no reason. At least if we go queen e2 and take, we get to castle, right? But to me, king d1 looks very, very normal. And this is actually a more common idea than you would think in this opening, to move the king to d1. It's safer than it looks. It's safer than it looks, but of course we will have to prove that. And okay, so my opponent castles, which unpins the knight. So now knight takes e5 is an actual threat. So I think that we should start by kicking the queen away and X-ray defending the rook. The pawn. So now the pawn has plenty of support. We could, of course, play pawn to d4, but that does weaken the king's position, obviously. So I want to be a little bit careful with playing that. The queen goes back to g6, as kind of expected. By the way, if you're enjoying this video so far, please drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I would really appreciate it. And okay, the question is, well, there's a few questions in this position. Firstly, can we play d4? That's the question I first want to answer. And on the surface, yes, black has no pawn to c5 to try to undermine my center. There is, however, pawn to f6, which is a little bit more scary, because if we take, things can open up against our king pretty quickly. So if pawn d4, pawn f6, we could throw in the move bishop to d3, hitting the queen. I'd like to go bishop d3, but I don't want to block this pawn in, because then what is our dark squared bishop doing, right? So d4, f6. Of course, black could play a move like bishop to f5, which I'm less concerned about, because pawn f6 is the move I think creates the most counterplay. Although bishop f5 also looks viable, but our queen would open up to the defense of the c2 pawn, so that should be fine. Yeah, let's go pawn d4, f6, bishop to d3, and then where does the queen move? Where does the queen move? Let's say queen to f7. I think we can go bishop to f4? No, that's a little bit problematic. But okay, bishop to f5 on the board. I'd love to play the move knight to h4, forking the pieces, except firstly, it opens the diagonal for checks for a move like bishop to g4 check. Secondly, black could just take it with the dark squared bishop if he wants to, so that's not all that appealing. It is definitely a strange position. It'd be really interesting to check this with the engine afterwards, but I don't think it's quite as dangerous as it looks. Of course, I would prefer my king on the g1 square, but we don't have that luxury. Okay, what else can we do? Well, I'd like to start some kingside expansion to try to make the black king uncomfortable. So let's say h3, f6, g4. The bishop always has the e4 square, though, which makes me feel like trying to chase it away is kind of pointless. There is, however, there are some interesting ideas here, because if f6 is played, then that does allow knight to h4, because the bishop doesn't see the h4 square anymore. The only problem is that now, if f6, knight h4, there's always a check on this diagonal of some sort, and black gets completely out of danger, and then he'll take, and then we're in big trouble. So, can we get out of the checks preemptively with a move like bishop to e2, for example? And then if f6, knight to h4, that looks very, very good. Well, the issue with bishop to e2 is that there is bishop takes c2 check, because our queen disconnects from the c2 pawn, so that doesn't quite work, annoyingly. There is kind of a case to be made for playing king e2, trying to run to the king side, which would, of course, sacrifice the c2 pawn, but we can try and justify that, although it does seem hard to justify, in all fairness. What else could we do? We could just play a move like bishop to f4. And if f6... maybe we have to take to alleviate some of the pressure. Although I'd rather not. That might be what we have to do. So bishop f4, f6. The problem is, if the f-file clears up, then there's always bishop takes c2 with discoveries on the queen. That's the issue. So, alright. There's nowhere else for the bishop to really go, though. Bishop f4, f6. We could consider pawn e6, actually. Ah, yeah, we could. Yes. I think that works. It's a very interesting thing. In the Vienna, a lot of the time, this f6 break against the white pawn structure like this is a very thematic idea, right? Okay, a6 is a strange move. But a lot of the time, pawn e6 is a good response. Not only is this a passed pawn, but a lot of the time you even sacrifice the pawn on e6 just to keep the f-file shut for the black pieces. So, okay, pawn to a6. Should we take? Well, this knight isn't actually doing anything, so I don't think so. The question is, where do we put the bishop? If we come back to a4, we keep the pressure. If b5, bishop b3, we have good pressure on d5, and because c6 can't be played yet, I don't think that's a bad idea. Bishop to e2, of course, blunders the c2 pawn. Bishop d3, we just lose a pawn, and that's no good. Bishop f1 is the other consideration, I suppose, then. So it's either bishop a4 or bishop f1. I don't want to take the knight. Also, if I take, the queen could take, which looks pretty good. If bishop f1, let's say f6, e6, knight d8, going after the pawn. Yeah, I don't love that. I'm going to go bishop a4. So now if the same sequence of moves of f6, e6, knight d8, I can play a move like bishop to d7, trying to just lodge the pawn in place. Okay, knight a5, that's an interesting move, trying to come into c4. I don't think it's all that scary. I mean, there's knight b2 check, sure, but I can just go rook to b1, I think. And if knight to c4, there's no threat. I mean, it's a good square, but you'll lose this pawn. So let's say rook b1, b5, bishop b3, knight c4. I probably am happy to take. I'm probably happy to take that. Yeah. I don't really see another option anyway. So rook b1 looks very natural. And if this bishop gets traded off for this knight, that's not the end of the world. That's not the end of the world. Okay, he does go b5. So let's drop our bishop back. That's the only move. If knight takes bishop, we could take with this pawn, but then pawn a5, pawn a4 looks a bit scary. Of course, taking with this pawn blunders the rook, so I think we have to take with the rook, just by process of elimination. Black secures the bishop pair. Also, c5 is on the cards, which is probably a good shout. Probably a good shout. If, like, c4 ideas, I mean, we can always just drop our rook back. h6. What does that do? I don't know. I don't understand that move. I like the look of king to c1. I think. trying to get off of this diagonal so that knight to h4 is an actual idea. Again, I still can't run this way because we hang the c2 pawn, which I'm not willing to do. There's an argument for pawn e6 clearing the e5 square for the knight, or trying to win c7, although winning c7 seems kind of silly. Let's go king c1. Let's go king c1. Again, that is intended to get the king off of this diagonal so that knight to h4 could become more of a reality. Okay. I'm not sure what that move actually accomplishes. It's kind of an improving move, but yeah, I mean, you can take my knight if you want. I'm not really fussed. So king to b2? Mate, Then I'm kind of restricting this rook, though, which I don't like. What else can we do? How can we improve this position, to be fair? How can we improve this position? Maybe f6 is the idea. So my rook is disconnected because the bishop's in the way. But I will still play f6. I'll still play it. Maybe he thinks that if I move my knight, you can win the g2 pawn. So maybe rook to e2 makes sense. One, we add another layer of protection to the c2 pawn, and we add another layer of protection to the g2 pawn, which seems logical. Whoa, that's a free pawn. I think I can grab that. Rook b5, rook b8. Take, take. Bishop a3 is on the cards, which is annoying, but if here, rook b8, pawn a4, there is just a move like c6, actually, and then we have to take regardless. Then again, if a4 we can take anyway, and if b4, maybe b4 is more so the idea. Yeah, probably. Take rook b8. Take, take. Can my king run? It's just it hangs the c2 pawn, which looks very scary. And bishop a3 is on the way. The difficult question. What about... Knight h4 just doesn't look right. It doesn't look right to me. I mean, it doesn't actually do anything. The queen could just move, actually. And I've accomplished nothing. Knight e1? b4? With the idea being if take here, take, take. When my king goes to d2, the knight covers c2. And that's the idea anyway. And also covers g2 quite nicely. But if knight to e1, b4, then I don't know what I'm doing. Although, maybe pawn c4, freeing up the rook's access to g3. That could be nice. I'm going to go for that. It looks incredibly passive, and maybe it is. Maybe a move like f6 is very strong here. And, I mean, it doesn't look fun, admittedly. If pawn to a4, I think I can take on b5 now. Yeah, he goes for it. But now I think I can take. Because the idea is that after the trade of rooks... Oh, that's not a move I expected. Although I probably should have expected it, because that's just a double attack. Yeah. Yeah, that I just completely missed that idea. Good move. It's a good move. c4. Nah, you can just take it, though. That doesn't do anything. Doesn't do anything. Okay. Do I sack the exchange with rook b4? Bishop takes, pawn takes. Pawn a3 looks pretty deadly, though. So probably not. If rook b2, then bishop a3, rook b1, queen takes c3. I guess I just have to play that. What do I have? Well, if queen here, queen g3 offering a queen trade, if he accepts that, then I think we're okay in that endgame. If queen g3, queen d4, bishop h6, there's queen to e5 covering g7, which I don't like. Yeah, I don't think I have anything. If rook to e3, preparing rook g3, rook e3, check, king d1. The king is safe on d1, to be fair. And maybe I can escape like this. Yeah, maybe I can. Defending a very bad position. Although, if rook e3, there is queen takes d4, which looks pretty dire. Maybe there's bishop takes h6, though. And if take, then discovered check, winning the queen. Well, discovered attack. Rook e3, queen takes, bishop h6. If queen e5, rook g3, bishop f6. Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm doing there. The whole pawn chain just falls. Bishop d2, queen c4. Nah, that's no good. Okay, I think what I'm going to do then, in absence of any other moves that I like, is we're going to go queen to e3, offering a queen trade and defending d4. If bishop a3 check, we'll play king to d1, and I think we survive that. The knight and the rook are doing an excellent job of guarding the weaknesses in the position. Currently, because black sacrificed the b5 pawn to win the c3 pawn, we are level on material. So if we could secure a queen trade, this is probably a holdable position. Very impressed by how quickly my opponent's playing. This is really, really fast and very good as well. Yeah, we'll have to check with the computer afterwards to see where we went wrong here. I know queen f2 is a line, but I've never seen bishop e7. I've just never seen that idea before. So perhaps I mishandled the position. I'm not sure. Like I said, we'll have to check. But right now, we're kind of just fighting for our lives. So, okay, what if black just declines the queen trade with queen to c4? What if he just declines? Well, I've got to admit, it becomes difficult to generate counterplay, and a2 is very weak. If I do this, then whoops, I lose the rook after bishop a3. So if queen c4, I'm really not sure what I play. Okay, he gives the check. Let's move the king. Queen c4 is still what I'm expecting. Oh no, but then the bishop hangs. But then the rook... Oh no, the rook is protected. Wait, what? No, that's disgusting. If queen c3, rook b1, king d2, bishop c1, checkmate. No, the king goes back, but then after takes, it's checkmate. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. That is a very high level move. That is a very high level move. I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of questioning this game right now. I think you all know what I mean, but we'll save our accusations till the analysis. Yeah, I'm not really sure what we can do. If rook c1, bishop takes, queen takes, I mean, we go down the exchange, and we're going to lose anyway. I suppose we can trade, but I don't know. Yeah, there's that as well, I suppose. Yeah, this is just game over. King d2 just blunders mate. And we can do this and try and play this position, but it's obviously completely lost. Completely lost. Rook and knight for a queen, but also we have 0 activity. And what we'll do is we'll play on. We'll see how my opponent plays this position, but I am incredibly suspicious, to be totally honest. Okay, let's go rook d2. Just don't have any counterplay, do I? What can I generate? Let's go c4. Try and open up lines against the king. Maybe that can yield something. I'm really trying to figure out my opponent's time usage. That's one of the big things. Yeah, I mean, what a move. What a move. My king can't move anywhere. If here blocking, suppose that's my only choice. Okay. Pawn advances. This is the threat. Alright then. Well, I guess I have to move my king. Now we are threatening to take the bishop. I have vague ideas of bishop a3 check. Yeah, I suppose I've just got to move back, don't I? Now what's the idea? No way. If he repeats, that would be incredibly suspicious. Because that would be something a computer would recommend. Nah, this guy's cheating. This guy's cheating. Yeah, see, this is why we're playing on, because we're trying to figure out if he's cheating or not. And I'm not saying that because I've lost the game, right? Like, the way that he's playing is, like, very high level for no time spent, right? For a 1500 rated player, it's like, really, mate? Really? I mean, it's possible. It's possible, but it's not likely. Okay, now he changes his mind. All right. Well, I suppose we don't have anything better. I mean, I don't have any other moves other than sacking the rook. Maybe we can get him to draw with us if he misuses the engine. That'd be pretty funny. To get a repeat rep. Well, it's not a threefold repetition, but it's the same position repeated 3 times. No, okay, he doesn't. Knight f3. Ah, there's takes though, and the rook is pinned. Okay. Knight d3 is interesting. If take, then take, of course. And this time, the rook isn't pinned. Again, I know I have this move, but I don't want to overuse it. Wait. Is that not a draw? Wait, how is this not a draw? Wait, how is this not a draw? Oh, wait, no, the king's on d2. Oh, no, I mixed up the move order. Oh, the king had to be on d2. Oh, no. I messed it up. I should have done this. Ah, oh, damn it. Yeah, I think we can resign here. But okay, we'll play on just to see how he handles the position. Just to see how he handles it, and if he keeps playing strange moves. Who doesn't? Okay, come on. Who doesn't take the rook? Really? Really? Okay, let's take. Of course, queen takes is the only move that makes sense. Let's go bishop d2 to give our king some breathing room. Okay, I don't understand why you wouldn't take with the pawn here and then give a check and promote. This is so obviously engine play. It's unbelievable. Like, A3. I mean, I understand you're setting up a checkmate by taking away the b2 square. I get that. But a 1500 doesn't find that. Obviously cheating. Obviously cheating. No question about it. We can check the game review. It'll be an incredibly high accuracy, I'm sure. But wow, okay. Yeah, 98.9% accuracy, I mean. Okay. Okay, yeah, sure. I mean, let's go through it. There's still stuff to be learned from the game. But okay, first let's check his account. Because when I loaded in the game, I saw that he joined over 2 years ago. So I was like, well, there's no way he's a cheater. I check this before every game I play to see how old the account is. Which is, by the way, a really good rule of thumb, because it reduces the amount of cheaters you'll face. Puzzles 470. Okay. He's won basically every game. Somehow he drew a game. Okay. How did he draw a game? This will be an interesting look. How did he draw? Maybe he doesn't cheat every game? Okay. Why would you not take? Take and C3. Does he only turn the engine on at a certain point? Because this is not the guy we just faced. Yeah, I mean, he obviously cheated. But maybe he just doesn't cheat in all his games? I don't know. What are these moves? Okay. Yeah. Well, alright, whatever. Right, making progress. Now he's apparently getting mated. Oh, is this the idea? Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Like this. Oh, no. No king back. Here. I assume. Here, take. And then how does black survive this? Sorry, white survive this? I don't know. Okay. Yeah, that's really weird. Like, he's clearly not playing all of his games with an engine. But that game most certainly was. So, okay, I mean, we can, of course, report him because he obviously cheated. So, yeah. But, alright, let's look at the game. So, we have this, oh, by the way, yeah, so I was saying that after knight to c6, you can't take on e4 because of knight to d4, hitting the queen in c2. And there's some very bad lines for white. Like, let's take the most natural move, queen to d3, defending c2 and the knight. Well, after de4, queen e4, black is just winning after bishop to f5, and it's game over. So something like this. I mean, you can throw in rook b8, sure, queen a7, knight c2, and, you know, of course, white is completely lost. But we play bishop b5, knight c3, bc3. The computer prefers taking with the d-pawn. I prefer taking with the b-pawn. And after queen f2, bishop e7 is a move I've never, ever seen. So one of the lines that I've recently discovered is after take bishop d7, there was basically a game where I played d4 and blundered the fact that knight takes e5 defends the bishop, right? So after, like, take, I'm just down a pawn. However, there was an engine line which I found where after knight f3, the same tactic works after take, but the computer thinks that white has excellent counterplay, right? And black only has like only moves to try and survive this. It's pretty fun for the white pieces, I have to say. I don't know, a move like rook a b1, rook a d1, even rook e2 trying to double up. The black king is just stuck in the center of the board. It's really not fun. So I was hoping for that. My opponent went bishop e7. Here I went knight f3, which isn't the best move. Better is to take, go g3, and play d4, which makes sense. And if, like, bishop d7, now we drop the bishop back, and we have an equal game. But bishop e7, knight f3, queen e4, I go king d1, which is the best move. I did consider queen e2, but I didn't like this line personally. I couldn't see where our counterplay was coming from. So king d1, castles, rook e1 is a good move, queen g6, d4 is a mistake. Okay. So we have to do this immediately. And have to take queen e2. f6. Whoa, we're supposed to take? Okay, and then we force a queen trade. Okay, we're alright then. But I go d4, intending to meet f6 with e6, which is pretty good for white, considering the position isn't amazing. Bishop f5 is the best move, though, which my opponent finds very quickly. I go bishop to f4. He goes a6, which is the best move. I retreat the bishop. Knight a5, which is the best move. Not gonna lie, I mean, from a human perspective, b5 followed by knight a5 seems way more natural, but... Oh, no, sorry, that hangs the pawn. What am I on about? No, ignore me. Knight a5, rook b1, b5, bishop back. Taking on b3 as well felt a bit strange. I thought knight c4 was the more natural move, and then if I take, you take with the b pawn, but who am I to judge? This is an engine we're against after all. We go rook takes. h6. This is a very suspicious move, because h6 is the computer's top move, but I don't understand... Oh, I've got this on the wrong setting. Sorry. I had that on the complete wrong setting. Okay, that was not great. I don't understand why h6 is good. I don't get it. What happens if black does nothing? Why is h6 necessary? Bishop g3. Let's say black keeps shuffling. I still don't understand why this is a move. Is it because you want to go bishop g5? Okay, let's say we do this. No. No, I don't understand this move. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. Okay, well, I go king c1. Bishop e4 is the best move. I mean, come on now. Like, why are you not pushing on the queen side if that was your plan anyway? I mean, bishop e4 is clearly an engine move. Rook e2, a5, best move. I go knight e1. a4 is the best move. I take queen c6. I mean, that of course makes a lot of sense. I go rook b1. My idea of rook c5 sacrificing the exchange is actually what the computer wants, but that's no way to fight. Queen c3 is obvious. Queen e3. Bishop a3 check is the best move. King d1, and then rook a b8. Yeah, I mean, alright. A brilliant move, but the computer found it, of course. I take. Queen a1 check. If rook takes, then of course I take on c3. And here I believe I can survive. If rook takes, I'm actually winning, because there's no check. And if bishop takes, it's a draw after rook e3, giving me a way out. And after bishop b2, king d2, bishop c3, rook c3, material is equal. And the knight is defending. The queen a1 check is the only move which my opponent finds. Queen c1, only move to survive. Take, we take on f8 first and then take on c1. Queen d4 check is obvious. I block. Queen e5 is obvious. c4, queen h5 check is the best move, which is obviously an engine move. Rook e2, d4 is the best move, which makes sense. And then he goes queen a5 check. I go back, and the computer, like I said, would probably want to do that again. It's obviously the engine's top move, right? King d2, queen g5 check, one of the top engine moves. King d1, queen e5, again a top engine move. Knight d3, queen h5, again the top engine move. And here I just forgot my king needed to be on d2 before I play knight to e1. So I probably should have gone knight to f4, which if I had realized it wasn't a repetition, I would have played. And after a move like queen f5, I mean, I'm obviously completely losing, but I can try and play this position and, I don't know, trick him somehow, although I'm obviously playing an engine. But yeah, I forgot that this wasn't the same position, because in that position my king was on d2. And yeah, so bishop f3, I mean, come on, this is clearly the most natural move to play. I don't care what anyone says, this is way more natural. Bishop f3, gf3, queen f3. And after bishop d2, queen e2, this is far more natural. in my opinion, and then giving a check and promoting, getting rid of the bishop is the most natural approach. My opponent, of course, doesn't do it, and he finds a3, which is mate in 4, which, again, is not a very natural move. Any normal human being would probably give a check here, force the king away, and play a move like queen d1, trying to either infiltrate and attack the bishop and try and promote. But no, a3, and we have mate in 2. So, opponent clearly cheated. We can learn some things from that game, for sure. But, yeah, just chess.com, bruv. It's a bit ridiculous. It's a bit ridiculous. The problem is, though, when I look at his other games, it's like, well, it's not actually obvious, but that game he clearly cheated. I mean, he played it at 98.9% accuracy for a 1500 against, like, I'm like 2200 online. Like, really? Hopefully he gets banned, but I don't know. The plague of cheaters just continues, I suppose. I do have another very funny video on my channel where I faced another cheater, which I will show up here. That was a very old video, but an interesting one. And if you want to see the previous episodes of the speedrun, check out the playlist down there. Thank you for watching. Chess.com, please sort this out, and I'll see you in the next video.